going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and today we are going to be bringing you your Immortal Vulcan guide. So before we go ahead and get into the video on how to clear this guy, make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe. It helps me out a ton as a new YouTuber. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see here, I was able to score 500 million damage on Immortal Vulcan earlier today, and we're going to be taking a look at that run. But before we do, I want to go ahead and first of all, obviously show you the setup that I have on my characters, and then I'm also going to go in and show you some alternative setups for your teams, just to add a little diversity in case you don't have some of these characters, because I do realize I am using a Boss Syndrome character and a collab character respectively on my teams. So let's go ahead and first of all take a look at my team, and then we'll move on to both premium options as well as a few budget options to make this work. So first and foremost, we're going to start with Team 1, and we're going to start with why I use this team and kind of the reasons why you would use these characters in general, what you'll need in order to get through this. So first things first, as you can see here, we'll go ahead and read this off. For your advantageous effects, you need stacks and received damage increase on the target when poisoned, and this is permanent, applies to Team 1, stacks up to 50. So basically, I don't know what it is with these rules on all these things. They're always kind of murky and oddly worded. So let's go ahead and translate that into terms that make sense. So basically, the long and the short of it is, he's weak to poison damage, and it stacks up to 50 times, and you'll obviously need to and want to make sure that you get the 50 stacks for your second team to be doing maximum damage once they come in. So, next thing is going to be burn effect can be removed when using HP recovery. This significantly increases blue element fighters' attack by removing the burn effect, and this can be stacked to Team 2 only. So this effect you mostly are just going to ignore, I'm not going to lie. So you're basically going to ignore the HP recovery thing. You don't really need it, and it just kind of gets in the way. I mean, there's going to be certain situations with your teams that you can take advantage of it if you need to, and it can be effective specifically on Team 2, which will struggle to, live through the full round, and we'll get into that here in a moment. But, if you want to use some of the stones like the blue element stone that is going to boost or give you HP recovery whenever your character is below, I believe, 75% HP, you can use that, and so on and so forth. But as far as characters that are going to have HP recovery, it's not really necessary to bring those in, so don't get too hung up on the second effect. It's really the first one that you need to focus on, and then after that you'll just want to focus on trying to nuke him and stop the clock as reliably as possible. So when it comes to the disadvantageous effect, meaning what he is doing to you, significantly decreases your power charge rate for your fighters, and this is permanent and it applies to both teams. So your Tekken sets are not going to necessarily be doing you much good against this guy. This is kind of standard for some of these immortal bosses. So you're basically just going to want to focus on stacking damage as much as possible, which we'll show you how to do here in a moment. A boss stacks up attack by intervals, so basically he is going to do more damage over time. He has a ramping effect to his kit, and then a boss uses a specific pattern of attack and burns the target at a certain point. So he's going to apply burn, and he does kind of have a pattern to the way he does things. So he does hit very hard, specifically on Team 2 once he has ramped his attack up throughout the match. So do keep in mind, it's going to be an interesting one, and you'll see it in my run, but you're going to notice that you can actually, by the time you get to probably 10-15 seconds, you're going to lose a few characters. You just want to make sure that you've done enough damage so that whoever is left can play cleanup, and you'll see that in effect during my run here in a few minutes. But let's go ahead and take a look at the teams that I have. So the first team you're going to see here is kind of standard fare, with the exception obviously of Lady Big, who is there for poison. So we'll start with the poison, since that is going to be necessary for Team 1. So obviously Lady Big here is going to be a very good option. She is a red unit, so basically that means that Kay is going to be able to stack his leadership skill on her, meaning that you will be able to increase the red element fighters' attack by 45% and their power charge rate by 20%. So it's a pretty decent leadership skill overall. It's something you will want. Overall, I would say that K in general is a very strong leader option in general for a lot of these dungeons at this point. And you'll notice that many runs from many different game modes now are going to use him as kind of a linchpin option for his leadership skill. And then he'll be flanked by characters such as Rachel or The Rock, or maybe even Mr. Karate, or in this instance, Lady Big. So he is a very, very strong character overall, and definitely one that if you are wondering if you're kind of an intermediate player and you might have him sitting around, that you might have pulled him off the Unified banner, or you're wondering if you should put him in your raid up, I would definitely say that he is worth doing so if you don't have him, and then if you do have him, it's definitely worth doing so for memories. So on K, we are going to have standard fare, so nothing kind of special here. It's just going to be your standard K set, and then you're also going to have his option card, and then round it out with just a standard cooldown reduction / defense boost card, and then obviously the long PG finisher, which with this first team, one of the biggest issues with it, and one of the biggest issues with K in general, is you're probably going to definitely want to try and do this on semi-auto, obviously, because you want to make sure that he is firing off his finishers in the correct order, meaning you want to make sure that you use the 5 PG and not his standard on-kit 3 PG. Now, the issue is, when you're on semi-auto, you have to be very careful that when he uses that startup animation, which I can probably actually just show you here. So basically, we'll go into skill preview here, and for those of you who have used K, you'll know what I'm about to say, but basically, he is oftentimes, when he uses this, I believe it's this one is the correct one here. Yeah, so basically he turns around and he throws his glasses. The issue is on semi-auto, sometimes if he is not facing the character, especially on these Immortals, it can be tough to see him. He might get kind of lost underneath the characters. So make sure that you are facing the boss when you throw those glasses. On average, I needed to do it about 3 times per run with him, so yeah, you're going to just need to make sure you do hit the boss with it, and then from there it's fine. As long as he's in the animation, that's all you care about. You just want to make sure that you are going to be stopping the clock. So next up, you're going to see my my stones on him, and you're going to notice that on these teams in general, not all of my stones are maxed out, and some characters don't even have stones. So this isn't necessarily a stone-only situation, but I do get the feeling that if you don't have your main core of characters stone, then you're going to have issues. So you're going to make sure that they have stones attached to them, at least for your Rachel, your Kay, your Delans, and probably your Rugal if you're using this setup. So when it comes to Rachel here, you'll see she does have the standard 7 Night Stones. They are the attack ones. Now, as far as her cards, I just used Akane, and then I almost always find myself using the Immortal Successor 7 Nights collab option card. It just tends to be the most useful I've found for a lot of characters in these runs. So we have that on there, and then obviously the Maxima cooldown reduction card, so not anything too crazy here. Now, moving on to Lady Big. Lady Big, you can see mine is fairly underleveled for something like this, not as much as she can be, at 3-star, but I digress. I mean, she's definitely, not level 40, level 50, obviously, so she's not going to even hit very high CP thresholds. Mine is, and you're going to see that I don't even have imprint stones on here, so yeah, but I'm using another Akane set, and then defense CDR cards, so that is going to be her setup. So basically, the biggest issues with him for Team 1 are going to be just making sure that you have your K facing him and in position to land his finisher. It can be kind of funky. You just need to make sure that you get him up to 50 stacks, and then you want to make sure that obviously you are cycling through all of your abilities as fast as possible. And I found that I needed to do roughly around 120 to 140 million with the first team in order to get close with the second team. Biggest issue for the second team is going to be survival with this setup. So basically, you'll see here my Delans has a Leah set, and then he is going to have yet again the option card from the 7 Nights collab. And then I'm using the new Rugal option card. His first ability, I do believe, is going to be his strike. Yeah, so Deadly Strike is a strike attack. So it helps with that, but I was trying other cards, but it seemed like for whatever reason it could just be, you know, RNG based, but it did seem like I was doing more damage overall, however slight, with that one, so I went with that one. But really, you can use pretty much any of these option cards. I tried using the one for HP, the Maxima card, just for survival, and yeah, it wasn't working out. So this one here is important, I feel like, for him, though, on this run. Now, your biggest issue is keeping him alive. Dellins needs to at least stay alive until, I would say there's about, and your mileage may vary on this, it depends on how strong your characters are by comparison, but you'll want to keep him around for about until the clock is around 20 seconds or so, and then he can go ahead and just die, but that can be tough sometimes. It depends on kind of RNG a little bit with what the boss is doing, but yeah, so being that this gives him super armor, it is a bit of a more dependable way to keep him alive over time, so I put that one on him, and again, I find myself using this card more often than not. As predicted, that and the Rugal one are just phenomenal. We'll get to Rugal in a second, speaking of, but let's talk about Festoki. So Festoki is nothing new. We all know who Festoki is. My Festoki, luckily I already had, if we go to my imprint stones, I already had this on here, which I didn't even really necessarily even think about ever. It was just kind of there as a placeholder because I really didn't have a better stone for him. And then I was like, well, that actually kind of helps with the ability to give him recovering HP upon landing a critical when he is below 70% health. So, you know, that's cool. I don't think this is at all kind of, you know, necessary, but it was nice to have there. I just don't have any better stones for him at all, really, that I know of. But yeah, so anyway, moving on to his cards, I just have an Akane set, and then I have the Gintama option card that is going to increase, as you'll see here, his critical rate. So again, critical rate being important. I just want to do as much damage as possible before he goes down, which he will. He's less squishy because I don't know how much it has to do with the stone or not, but he's definitely less squishy than Dellins. So then again, Immortal Successor as his option card rounds out his kit. And then finally, the most important character on the team, and that is obviously going to be Boss Syndrome Omega Rugal. So Sunday we will be doing the big review for him, and I'm sure you guys already know it's going to be pretty positive, but, you know, without getting into all that, let's talk about the cards that I have on him. You know, I do have a full set of Boss Syndrome stones on him. They aren't completely maxed out, but close enough for science, so, and close enough to take down this guy. So as far as the set card, I'm using the Orochi Transcendent Being set. This set's very, very strong. I use it for a ton of stuff, I find. That or the Leah set I use quite a bit on both of my Boss Syndrome characters. And yeah, they've definitely come in handy. Definitely find them useful. As far as his option cards, I needed a little bit more damage, so I just went with an attack cooldown reduction. Again, as I said earlier with some of the other characters, you can use any of these cooldown reduction cards. Really, I wanted the extra damage, because really with Rugal, he is the linchpin of this entire thing. And then again, the Immortal Successor. So the reason why he's the linchpin is because Rugal, and you'll see it in the run, which we'll be getting to after I show you some other options, and then we'll move on to it. But the nice thing about Rugal is he is able to just pile on so much damage so quickly that he basically just plows through Vulcan. He really does. Now, I will say I do not like his finisher. I do not like this finisher at all. I find this finisher kind of inconsistent, because in PvEAI, people can roll through it, and the boss can sometimes just walk right past it. It's kind of stupid. It's less than ideal, but really we're nitpicking when we're talking about Rugal, and that's totally kind of getting off the beaten path here, but it does come up in these runs. You'll notice I did a lot of runs to get through this and kind of tweak this team, and that was something that I'd noticed. But yeah, so that is pretty much going to be Rugal. You'll be able to see his damage in action, and really he puts on so much damage that it doesn't matter. So as far as other options, so for Poison, first and foremost, there aren't a lot of characters, and we'll talk about the ones that there are. So obviously Lady Big is probably the best option, but if we scroll through here, you do have a few. Now, it's very unfortunate in the case of Alice here. She's green, and unfortunately that brings her down entirely against Vulcan, because he is going to be resistant to her. And just imagine getting released and being one of the best poison dealers in the game, and then realizing that your biggest claim to fame, the one boss dungeon where you should be the most relevant, you can't even be used in. Like, rip, really? So you can use her if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend it. I tried using mine. Mine's Awaken level 40, and she still wasn't able to get through much. So definitely would not recommend. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200. So you begin to get kind of tight on options here, but another one that you could use, and it's going to be a more free-to-play friendly option, is you could use this Angel. I haven't obviously used this one, but you could use her. She is decent as far as her kit goes, and really all you're trying to do is make sure that you hit the 50 stacks. So if you're trying to do so and just get by on a budget, there are worse options, and really you're kind of relegated. So you can use her as a free-to-play option, and you might have some luck as long as you take the time to build her out correctly. As I'd imagine you could probably get it done. It would require the rest of your team to pretty much be built in the way that they would need to be in order to make it work, but I'm sure it could be done. So moving through here, going through other options, the other FES option that obviously you're going to have in front of you for poison type damage, venom type damage, whatever you want to call it, is going to be Leona. Leona is really strong and probably the best one overall for this. She is obviously a blue type, meaning that she is going to be resistant to him and be dealing more damage to him. And she does obviously have venom on her, I believe it's her S3, her S2. Her S2. So she's going to have venom on her. Oh, she has it on her S3 too. So she has it on 2 of her attacks. So I haven't obviously ever used her too often because mine is not really built for PvE content, at least the endgame PvE content. But definitely you could use her and probably get through it pretty easy. I'd imagine she pretty much would hit him like a truck as long as she's built. So that's another really good option. So the next thing that we should talk about then is going to be the other characters that you can use, maybe as characters too, if you want to try and do the kind of healing options. Then there are some options there for free-to-play players that'll make it friendly towards them if you're wanting to try and take advantage of that effect to beat him. And really the first one I would highly recommend to you if you were trying to go that direction would be the Shizuru. This Shizuru, I've said in the past, I do recommend. I think she's very good. Overall, she's pretty strong. Now, if you go to her cores here, you're going to see that she is going to have reflects 40% of burn damage received and recovers HP by 2% when received burn damage. So basically, being that he is going to also have burn on his kit, and you are going to want to recover HP to counter him, then this is going to be kind of a match made in heaven. So very strong option if you're trying to take him down using that strategy. So there you go, you have her. I thought about actually trying it, and I might actually do that sometime in the next few days when I'm not working on the big review for Rugal, and go ahead and try this with her, and try maybe the HP options for the teams. So, not you, Lady Zero. You're not good for this. So the next one that I want to talk about for HP recovery, it's going to be a little further down, but she is another free-to-play option. So that'll make you guys out there happy that are ballers on a budget and trying to get your rubies the good old-fashioned free-to-play way. And that is going to be this Shermie. So this Shermie also is going to be able to heal. Obviously, you'll see it there. Recovers all team members' HP by 1.2% upon using a skill. She's also going to be blue, so again, advantageous towards Vulcan. Another option that you can use and try and take him down with. So yeah, that is another option for you. Now, as far as your Team 2 alternative comps with certain FES characters, you could easily do this if you went ahead, and I will swap those out and I will go ahead and show you. I have seen many people take him down using a team that is built like so. So Rio, and then Rock, and then Delwins. Pretty standard blue team overall, and this will be enough to take him down. You're able to spam your finishers very well thanks to Rio's leadership skill, giving you the extra power charge rate as well as the extra attack. So that is overall going to be very useful. And then if you take a look at Rock here, he gets a time to shine a little bit here. being able to just fire off his 3 PJ finishers and do decent damage. Rock is actually a little underrated in PvE for his damage output and his skill rotations. He's a strong character, his kit's wonky, so that's kind of his issue, but not the topic of the video, so we'll move on. But yeah, so those are alternative team comps that you can use with your FES characters if you're wanting to use the HP recovery effect to take him down, or whatever you're trying to do. Those are some different options. A few free-to-play options in there, but really these are not going to be, as we've said before, these are not going to, probably put my character back in there, these are not going to be characters that are a dungeon that you're going to want to use characters that are all free to play for and expect to get through it. The Immortal dungeons are not built for that. So really at the end of the day, it's one of those things where you're definitely going to at least want to, if you're wanting to go all the way to the end, make sure that you are at least trying to get a lot of FES in there and get them built up in order to get this done reliably. So now that we've said all that, we've done a lot of talking, we'll go ahead and show the run that I did with this team, and then you guys will be able to see it in action, and I'll kind of walk you through it as I went through and did it, and then that will be pretty much the topic for today, and we'll move on to the next one. So I will see you guys on the other side. Alright you guys, so here is the run that I did where I was able to clear him, and so basically things that I kind of gleaned from using this team comp. And like I said, I don't know how much of this will apply to other team comps that you might be using, whether you are trying to use a free-to-play method or otherwise, but basically the thing that I noticed using K specifically is obvious, and that is going to be you need to be very careful where he's facing when you use your chain drive. I noticed that basically I needed to chain mine 3 times throughout this run with this first team, in order to make sure that I properly cleared, and that was just to make sure that I stalled clock long enough to do enough damage. So kind of what I had gauged it by, I knew I could pretty much get through it if I could do about 40 plus million before I hit 30 seconds or so. That would pretty much ensure that I was going to be getting over 100 million damage with the first team, which would then in turn mean that my Team 2 did not have as much pressure on it, considering the fact that Dellen's tended to die pretty early on, and he was a main damage dealer next to Rugal, so that became a bit of an issue. So I just need to make sure, I told myself, I need to make sure this first team gets a good clean run in, and really the only thing that was stopping me a lot of the time was the chain drive issue, just making sure I was careful to connect it, and sometimes because your power is being drained by the boss, sometimes you'll be sitting there tapping on your finisher and it won't register because he basically just keeps draining as you're trying to tap. So yeah, that can be kind of tough sometimes because it'll kill a few seconds and then kind of ruin your run to an extent. But overall though, I was eventually able to get into a rhythm with it and get a pretty good run. Usually with Immortals, you're not going to just go in and get it on 1 or 2 runs. You're going to need to kind of stop and restart it numerous times before you're going to get a good, clean RNG run. And I kind of had a good feeling about this one. Coming out of the first team, I pretty much knew I had him. So I felt pretty confident here just based on the amount of damage I had done. So really you just want to try and get as much damage on him with this first team as possible to kind of soften the blow of the potential of you losing characters with this second team fairly early, which will happen. So here's the second team here, and really what you want to pay attention to is how much damage this boss is able to do to the other 2 characters not named Rugal, because Rugal does take damage consistently, but he's a lot less squishy than the other 2. So even though he is a attack type, he was able to pretty much soak most of the damage and not put himself in too much danger. And Festoki, like I said, being that he does have that 1 stone, he has a little bit more staying power than Dellen's, but if he did not have that, I highly doubt he would have been sticking around as long as he did. So yeah, I mean, it could be that stones like that are necessary for a team, because I do consider mine, even with as high level as my characters are, I do consider this team a little bit under leveled just based on the fact that, you know, not this team proper, but just this full team of 6 in general, because my Lady Big is obviously not going to be level 40, level 50, so she's not there, and then my Festoki, he's not up to level 50 yet. So for an Immortal, like I said, if you're going to want to reliably clear these guys easily, then you're going to need to make sure you've got pretty much maxed out characters. But you'll see here the damage just starts piling on, and this is where Rugal really starts to shine. Dellen's is dead, and I don't feel too uncomfortable yet. I'm not really sweating even with the clock ticking down in my face like that, because I knew I had my finisher, and I knew Rugal was good for the damage, so there you go. So that's the run, guys. Hopefully you found this a beneficial guide. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out a ton on the channel. And like I said, the next time you guys hear from me, I will be doing a review for this guy here, which, again, if you don't already know, it's going to be a pretty positive review. He's one of my favorite characters in PvE to use, and I don't want to give away too much on my overall opinion, but I'm very, very impressed. Very impressed. But anyway, guys, I will see you all in the next one. Look at all those rubies. It's a beautiful thing, guys. You all take care. Peace.
I'll continue.